So, a show of hands. Who here has taken the Myers-Briggs? Whoa. Extroverts, leave those hands up. Introverts, all right. Even intuitives, those who like the facts, sure things. Oh, what about the Enneagram? Enneagram, anyone? Okay, a fewer. There are 9 categories in this particular system of dividing people into personality types. And I just learned about another one the other day, people mapping. You ever heard of people mapping? According to people mapping, there are 4 core personality types: leader, people, free spirit, and task. Each has 3 inborn strength and 1 Achilles heel. There's always a shadow side. Just 1 Achilles heel, yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not throwing shade at any of these things. I have nothing against these tools. They help us to know ourselves better. And if there's anything you need to know about me, I'm all about knowing your truest self. So they help us know how we can be effective as leaders, as followers, and mostly when we work together as a team. We need these different kinds of people to come together because Lord knows if you put me in a room with a bunch of other ENFPs, you're going to get a lot of big ideas, but nothing's going to get accomplished. So, as I think about these types of things, I think about how we love our categories. We love our categories, especially now. Woke, not woke. Progressives, conservatives. And as November comes around, Democrat, Republican. I feel like there was once a day when those words had a little bit more of a gray area. But now the line in the sand is deep and wide and, I fear, dangerous. So instead of these categories, creating some sense of combined team spirit, it seems like the categories these days are driving us further apart. So today I think we're here to wonder about what God thinks about these categories. I wonder what God thinks about the other people. In fact, I have to wonder if in God's vocabulary, the word other actually exists. So when we catch up with Jesus today, some of this categorization is taking place. Once again, Luke's Jesus is telling a parable. And a reminder, what are parables supposed to do? They're supposed to crack open a little bit more about the way we think about or imagine God. They're supposed to help us understand a little bit more about what God's reign looks like. And so today, the parable is being told not just to the disciples, as it has been in the past couple of parables, but the parable today is directed toward those who trusted in themselves and regarded others with contempt. Now, there's nothing wrong with a healthy dose of self-confidence. But Jesus is beginning to paint a picture for us about what it looks like to be a student, to be a disciple. And to further illustrate his thoughts, Luke's Jesus speaks about 2 different people. The first character is a Pharisee. Now, you know who the Pharisees are. They're a group of people who emphasize obedience to the law of Moses. They are attentive. They are devout. They are people that you want around. They have an eye for ritual details. And that was important in Jesus' day because the Jewish community was dispersed throughout the Mediterranean. So all of these details that the Pharisees were attentive to were intended to bring the community and hold the community together. It was unifying. So in other words, Pharisees are not all bad people and cannot be characterized as such. We must not put the entire Jewish community into one box. None of us wants that. In this story, however, there does happen to be one Pharisee that does represent someone who thinks pretty highly of himself. But that Pharisee could be any single one of us, couldn't he? What does she say? I thank God that I am not like those other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, even Episcopalians. Might ring a bell. It might ring a bell for some of us. Might we have said these words before? Might we have had parents or grandparents who raised us to believe that we weren't like those other people? Well, there was a primary other in Jesus' culture, and it was the tax collector. Character number 2 in the story. Tax collectors are a part of the Roman system. And the Roman government hired people to collect taxes from the citizens, and those tax collectors were more than willing and happy to charge more to line their own pockets. So the first hearers of this gospel would have definitely viewed the tax collector as a scoundrel. So what Jesus is doing is giving us glimpses into these two people, and more importantly, into their inner thoughts. It's interesting that Jesus tells us what they were praying. These two characters are praying, and we're able to listen to their prayers. So what is the Pharisee praying? Oh Lord, I am thankful that I am not like those other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even this tax collector. I do all the right things. I deserve the holy gold star. But now what about the tax collector? What is he praying? Oh Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner. It's a prayer of humility. And even though his way of life isn't the most upright, at least in this moment, he is honest about who he is. And this knowledge comes in the form of a confession. A confession, something that you and I do here every single week. And what do you know? The tax collector is the one who is justified, or in other words, restored to right relationship and harmony with God. So you can imagine those who would have heard this parable in Jesus' culture would have been shocked by this. A tax collector has gained favor in God's sight? A tax collector? Not the super religious, not the person who fasts twice a day, not the person who gives 1/10 of his income, not that there's anything wrong with that. As I said, the Pharisees aren't all bad. This Pharisee, however, represents the larger problem, which is those who have little regard for those that they don't understand. Those who haven't taken the time to know each other. This man has canceled out the tax collector, the other. The Pharisee thought that the tax collector falls outside of the warmth of God's sunshine. But the parable opens up something different. So what is the work of this parable in our own lives today? Well, I don't think we have to look far to know and feel that what Luke's Jesus is drawing our attention to is to an either or nature of society. An either or. And I think that's where we live today. We are living in an either or society. And we're so inclined to draw clear lines in the sand. But as one of my spiritual directors once told me, as soon as we draw a line in the sand, Jesus quickly goes to the other side. Now, there's a Jewish scholar named Amy Jill Levine, and she has suggested something that I really think brings a lot more light to this parable. She is a member of the Jewish community and a New Testament scholar. And she says that there's a translation issue here. And in our translation, it says that the man went to his home justified rather than the other. The tax collector goes home justified rather than the Pharisee. But Levine suggests that an alternative, perhaps more accurate translation is that this man went home justified alongside the other. Alongside the other. And I think that's our call, to walk alongside the other, not cancel the other. We are called to hold each other's hands, especially now in the midst of so much uncertainty. And somehow this sense of connection, this idea of being alongside each other, is the theological key to our spiritual health and well-being. This parable calls us not to an either-or worldview, but to a both-and worldview, a world in which we see ourselves as connected, as a system in which no one is dispensable and all can be redeemed. As Lydia Bastianich likes to say, she's a chef, at the end of her shows, tutti a tavola a mangiare. Tutti, all to the table to eat. Tutti frutti. Right? That's what it means, all of us fruits. We need each other. We need each other. The Pharisee, the overly attentive, the fastidious, and the faithful. We also need the tax collector, dubious maybe and blessed with moments of change, humility, and self-awareness. They both, it seems, have a little work to do. And I'm no different. I can be a little proud from time to time. I can be stubborn and easily bullied. It's hard to claim that I'm right sometimes, and even harder to admit that I'm wrong. Within us is the ego of the Pharisee who prays, "Don't make me like them." And within us is the self-awareness of the tax collector who confesses, "Have mercy on me." Both voices are there, and somewhere in between is the real voice, the voice of the child that God created you to be. A little bit scared and absolutely perfect. Just think about the weeks that we have had behind us and the weeks that we've got ahead of us. We are pushed and pulled in so many directions. And in the words of the powerful Howard Thurman, there is so much traffic going on in our minds, so many different kinds of signals, so many vast impulses floating through our organism that go back thousands of generations. But still there is something that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. Especially now, we're asking a lot. Who am I? Where am I? Who are we? And that's a great question that we ask right here in church, right here, week by week, where we stop for a little while to remember who we are. We listen, we pray, and we confess. And we confess not to feel guilty, but to be pulled into a sense of unity that can only be found in the forgiveness of God. And then we take a deep breath and we find our feet as we slowly and intentionally move to this altar rail, and we kneel not as us's and them's. We kneel together, the Pharisee alongside the tax collector, the extrovert alongside the introvert, the peacemaker alongside the troublemaker, the humble beside the haughty, those who push our buttons alongside those who reset our buttons, the know-it-alls beside the I'm trying to figure it out. Because at the end of the day, we're just a great big collection of others trying to find our way. And God just can't help but love us all.